Rob Carter had walked into burning buildings before, but nothing compared to the fire in his chest the morning he stepped through the glass doors of the 47-story tower in Midtown Manhattan. The lobby glowed with polished marble, gold-trimmed elevators, and the quiet hum of wealth, the kind of place where men like his son-in-law strutted as if the world owed them applause. Rob's boots echoed sharply on the floor, an unfamiliar contrast to the leather dress shoes and glossy stilettos around him. But he didn't slow down, not today. He clutched a thick envelope in his calloused hand, the same hand that once held his newborn daughter, Lily. Inside that envelope lay the truth, cold, undeniable, and powerful enough to shatter the polished facade of the man who destroyed her life. Rob didn't come here to scream or swing fists. No, what he carried was sharper than violence. It was justice, wrapped in paper and ink. The security guard, tall and bored behind a Mont Blanc pen and visitor log, looked up. "Sir, can I help you?" "I'm here for Jason Miller," Rob said. His voice was calm, too calm. "Tell him, Rob Carter is waiting." The guard blinked. Most men who came here for Jason wore tailored suits and Rolex watches. Rob wore a faded work jacket and jeans still dusted with sawdust from his construction site. The contrast made several people glance over with mild curiosity, but Rob didn't care. He scanned the skyline through the glass wall, the jagged crown of Manhattan rising against the gray morning. Somewhere up there, Jason was sipping overpriced coffee, pretending he wasn't the reason a tiny white coffin had been lowered into the ground 2 weeks earlier. The elevator chimed. Rob stepped in, the envelope gripped tighter. As the doors closed, a memory cut through him like a blade. Lily in the hospital bed, hair matted with sweat, arms wrapped around a tiny blue blanket with no baby inside it. Her voice barely a whisper. Dad, he never came. That was the moment Rob's soul cracked. The elevator climbed. Floor 12, floor 18, floor 25. Rob exhaled slowly, grounding himself the way Lily's therapist had taught her. He felt the weight of every second Jason spent laughing in a hotel suite while Lily bled and begged for help. Every heartbeat of the child who never even got a name because the parents still hadn't agreed on one. Every lie Jason told afterward. The elevator opened to a hallway lined with smoked glass offices and a panoramic view of Manhattan's Silver River below. A receptionist looked up, startled, as Rob approached. "Mr. Carter, they told me you were coming. Jason is finishing a meeting." Rob set the envelope on her desk with a soft thud that made her jump. "Good," he said. "He's going to need a minute." He turned toward the conference room, watching silhouettes move behind the frosted glass. One of those silhouettes belonged to Jason, the man who left his pregnant wife alone, the man who climbed into a hotel bed with another woman while Lily gave birth, terrified and dying inside. Rob stepped closer, jaw tight. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was the moment the world would finally pivot, and the man who walked out of that hotel room would learn that some sins don't fade. They follow you. They hunt you. They wait for the day someone stronger decides to collect. Rob placed his hand on the conference room door handle. And just as he pushed it open, Jason turned, saw him, and the color drained from his face as if he had seen the ghost of the child he abandoned. Jason first met Lily on a crisp autumn afternoon when New York felt like a movie set waiting for two strangers to collide. She was standing near the ticket machines at Grand Central Station, clutching a worn canvas tote and squinting at the overhead signs as if they were written in a language she had never seen before. Jason noticed her before she noticed him, drawn in by the way she kept pushing a strand of hair behind her ear whenever she grew frustrated. It was a small, almost unconscious gesture, but something about it softened him in a way nothing at his high-pressure finance job ever did. Lily finally looked up, breathless, cheeks flushed from rushing. She asked if he knew which train went to New Jersey, and Jason found himself answering far more gently than he intended. There was no grand spark, no instant destiny, just two ordinary people sharing a moment of kindness in a city built on hurry and ambition. Over the next few weeks, they crossed paths more often than chance should allow. Sometimes it was at the small coffee kiosk near Lexington Avenue, where Lily nursed a modest drip coffee while Jason grabbed an espresso he barely tasted. Other times, it was on the train platform, Lily balancing her papers while Jason pretended not to watch her with quiet fascination. Jason learned she was a teacher who spent her days helping children read their first full sentences. Lily learned he worked in finance, though he downplayed the long hours and constant pressure. She liked that he didn't brag, didn't perform, didn't try to impress her the way so many men in Manhattan did. He liked the way she listened. Really listened. As if he mattered beyond his resume. Their first actual date happened almost accidentally. Lily had missed her train after staying late to help a struggling student, and Jason had just stepped out of his office building with a headache from too many spreadsheets. They walked together down Fifth Avenue, passing storefronts that gleamed with things neither could afford. They ended up sharing a simple dinner at a tiny diner tucked between a nail salon and a dry cleaner. In that booth, with the flickering overhead light and the chipped formica table, Jason felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Lily talked about her students. Her dreams of one day having a classroom decorated with bookshelves she built herself, and her hope that kindness still mattered in a world obsessed with speed. Jason told her about his mother, about growing up without much, and about wanting to make something of himself. By winter, they were inseparable. Lily brought homemade lunches to share in Bryant Park, and Jason took earlier trains so he could walk her to work. Her father, Rob, approved of Jason cautiously, liking his politeness but sensing a restlessness beneath the surface. Lily didn't see it. She only saw the man who warmed her hands on cold evenings and promised he wanted a future where she and their imagined family never had to struggle. On a snowy evening outside Penn Station, Jason surprised Lily with a tiny silver necklace shaped like a crescent moon. It wasn't expensive, but she cherished it as though it were priceless. She leaned into him, believing wholeheartedly that this gentle beginning would last forever. What she never saw, what no one saw, was the spark of ambition already twisting inside him, waiting for the perfect moment to eclipse everything they had built. But beneath that winter calm, a storm neither of them expected had already begun forming. Lily and Jason's life together began in a small, sunlit apartment in Hoboken, just across the Hudson River, close enough for the Manhattan skyline to fill their living room window like a promise. It wasn't luxury, not even close. The building was old brick, the hallway smelled faintly of someone's forgotten takeout, and the radiators hissed every winter night like irritated snakes. But to Lily, it was home, a beginning, a place where she believed love could grow into something permanent. Their apartment sat on the 4th floor, reachable only by a narrow staircase that creaked in protest at every step. Inside, everything was simple. Lily decorated the space with thrift store finds and soft throw blankets that smelled faintly of lavender. Jason bought a sleek secondhand TV, bragging that it was a temporary step until he could afford the kind the executives kept in their high-rise condos. In the corner, against the only wall with good light, Lily placed a modest desk where she graded papers on her aging laptop, its keys shiny from years of use and hope. Every morning, their world began with the same rhythm. Jason rushed out first, wearing crisp shirts and the same navy tie he rotated too often, clutching his coffee and boarding the PATH train toward Manhattan's financial district. Lily followed later, balancing her canvas tote, her lunch in a plastic container, and her lesson plans marked with colorful sticky notes. She rode the bus toward the small elementary school where she taught reading to second graders who adored her gentle voice and patient smile. The city was their backdrop. New York in its relentless, glittering beauty, towering glass buildings that looked like ambition sharpened into steel. Jason loved that energy. It fed him. When he walked through the revolving doors of his midtown office tower, he felt validated simply by standing among people who moved with purpose. His building's lobby gleamed with marble floors and tall chrome pillars, the kind of place where people spoke in hushed tones and carried leather briefcases instead of backpacks. Jason often took pictures of the Manhattan skyline from his office floor, sending them to Lily with captions like, "Someday this will all be ours." Lily, on the other hand, found magic in smaller things. Saturday mornings meant walking to the corner bakery, buying 2 warm bagels, and sharing them on a bench facing the river. She loved the way the light hit the water, the slow bobbing of sailboats, the peaceful contrast to the frantic heart of the city. She didn't need penthouses or pricey dinners. She dreamed of a future filled with simple joys, weekend picnics, a backyard someday, maybe children running through a lawn. But Jason's dreams began shifting faster than Lily realized. After he joined a new financial firm located near Bryant Park, his world expanded in ways Lily could barely recognize. The office had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Manhattan and conference rooms filled with polished wood tables and expensive pens. His colleagues wore tailored suits and talked about bonuses that sounded like lottery winnings. They lived in shiny high-rises with rooftop lounges and gyms overlooking the city. Jason started craving that lifestyle. He began pointing out ads for luxury condos, circling online listings far outside their budget. For the first time, Lily felt a subtle distance, growing not because he pulled away physically, but because his eyes no longer lit up at the same things hers did. Still, she tried to keep up. She packed him lunches, left encouraging notes in his coat pocket, and waited up late for him to come home. She believed that love could survive ambition if both people wanted it badly enough. As the weeks passed, the apartment filled with signs of two lives drifting. Jason's briefcase sat untouched on weekends while he slept late, exhausted from long hours. Lily's books stacked in corners, untouched, because she had no energy to read after worrying about the growing tension. Even the once beautiful view of Manhattan felt different, like a city pulling Jason away from her inch by inch. The apartment that once felt warm started feeling smaller, colder. The air carried a quiet heaviness, and neither of them dared to name it. And without knowing it, they were standing on the edge of a fault line that would soon crack their world wide open. Jason Miller didn't become a villain overnight. He wasn't born cruel, or selfish, or hungry for admiration. But something in him had always leaned toward the glow of validation, toward the applause he never earned but desperately wanted. And Manhattan, with its skyscrapers built on ambition and its streets paved in ego, fed that hunger until it swallowed every decent part of him. When Jason joined Hawthorne and Lyle Financial, he was still the same man Lily believed she married, tired, insecure, but trying. The firm changed him. The moment he stepped into that 28th floor office filled with glass walls, polished desks, and colleagues who spoke in numbers larger than his entire yearly salary, something clicked inside him. He wanted more. More money, more power, more attention. More of the world that glimmered through the windows like a promise meant just for him. And then came Chelsea Brooks. Chelsea wasn't just a woman, she was everything Jason thought he deserved. 25, striking in a clean, curated way that photographed well in the office's reflective surfaces. She wore soft beige coats in winter, carried a slim MacBook Air under her arm, and walked the hallways like she was made of light. She laughed at Jason's half-baked finance jokes, complimented his leadership energy, and never mentioned his modest apartment or his wife who packed lunches in thrifted containers. Chelsea represented the life Jason wanted to belong to, the life Lily, in his twisted logic, was holding him back from. The affair didn't start with a kiss, it started with power. Jason loved the way Chelsea looked at him. Like he was already a rising star, not a man barely keeping up with credit card debt. She fed his ego with compliments disguised as admiration, asking for his expert advice, leaning in a little too close during after-work drinks, letting her hand brush his when she passed documents across the table. Jason didn't pull away. He started staying late. He blamed client calls, emergency deadlines, market volatility. Soon he wore cologne Lily didn't recognize, bought ties she never saw the receipts for, and installed a second passcode on his phone because of work confidentiality. The truth was far simpler. Chelsea became the mirror that reflected the version of himself he wanted to be, and Jason, blind with ego, stepped into that reflection until he lost sight of the man he promised Lily he'd be. The first time they kissed was after a corporate dinner at an upscale lounge overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Jason ordered whiskey he couldn't afford, Chelsea ordered a cocktail she barely touched, and the night hummed with low music and temptation. She leaned her head on his shoulder as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He didn't stop her. Her perfume, something expensive with warm vanilla and jasmine, filled his senses. It felt intoxicating. It felt like proof that he mattered. He kissed her. And he didn't regret it. From that moment, Chelsea became a fixture in his life. Lunch breaks, late nights, secret hotel rooms booked under fake names. She told him he deserved promotions, admiration, luxury. She whispered things Lily never would, things that made his chest puff with pride he didn't earn. While Lily sewed tiny baby clothes and rubbed lotion on her swelling belly, Jason scrolled through Chelsea's photos, imagining a future where he basked in praise instead of responsibility. Chelsea fed the darkest parts of him, and Jason let himself be fed. He began resenting Lily's simplicity, her softness, her hope. Her pregnancy became a burden, not a blessing. He didn't say it aloud, but the thought crawled inside him like a parasite. She's tying me down. And on the night Lily needed him most, 7 months pregnant, terrified, alone, Jason didn't hesitate. He chose Chelsea. He chose the hotel room. He chose himself. And he had no idea that choice would destroy everything he thought he controlled. The night everything shattered began as quietly as any other in their apartment. Lily stood in the kitchen, one hand braced against her lower back, the other stirring a pot of soup she hoped Jason would eat when he finally came home. She was 7 months pregnant, and her body felt heavier than it should. The baby shifted inside her, a firm kick beneath her ribs that made her wince. She whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's here," even as her own breath felt tight with worry. Jason wasn't home yet. He had texted an hour earlier, "Important client meeting, don't wait up." Lily had smiled sadly at her phone. She was used to these messages, now short, curt, and always arriving right before she began to suspect something was wrong. Still, she tried to keep faith. She set the table for two, adjusting the silverware out of habit, then glanced at the cradle they had assembled 2 weeks earlier. A small blue blanket rested inside it, patterned with white stars. She touched it gently before sitting down, feeling the familiar ache spread across her lower belly. Minutes stretched into hours. Jason didn't call. At 9:47 p.m., Lily felt the first sharp pain. Not the dull ache she had experienced before. This one was different, deeper, like something gripping her from the inside. She sat up straight, her breath shaking. A warm trickle ran down her leg. Her heart stuttered. Her water was breaking. She grabbed her phone with trembling fingers and called Jason. The call rang once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. She tried again. No answer. By the 4th attempt, her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the phone. "Jason, please. I think it's early. I need you," she whispered into the voicemail, her voice cracking. No reply came. Another pain hit, and she doubled over, gripping the edge of the kitchen table. Panic clawed up her throat. She looked around the apartment as if someone might appear, but she was alone. With her breath shallow and sweat prickling her forehead, Lily dialed 911 but stopped. Something inside her insisted she could get to the hospital faster on her own. She didn't want to overreact. She didn't want to be dramatic. She opened the rideshare app on her old iPhone, praying a driver would accept quickly. A notification buzzed just as she confirmed the ride. Jason had texted back. Her eyes blurred as she opened it. "Can't talk. Busy." That was all. No question. No worry. No acknowledgement. Lily pressed a trembling hand to her belly. "We're okay," she whispered, though fear churned so violently inside her she felt nauseous. The Uber driver arrived in minutes, an older man with kind eyes who immediately saw her distress. "Ma'am, you need the ER?" he asked, his voice steady. Lily nodded, gasping through another contraction. As the car sped toward Manhattan, she clutched the seat, tears spilling freely now. Streetlights streaked across the window, flashing across her pale face, reflecting the chaos inside her chest. She tried Jason again. Still nothing. Meanwhile, at that exact moment, Jason stepped into a luxury boutique hotel near Central Park. Chelsea looped her arm around his, laughing softly, unaware or uninterested in the life unraveling miles away. The lobby glowed with soft golden lighting, polished floors, and quiet music. They looked like a couple out of a magazine. Jason's phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it. Back in the Uber, Lily felt herself slipping in and out of focus as the city blurred around her. Her breaths came sharp and uneven. "That's it, ma'am. Stay with me," the driver urged as he pulled up to the emergency entrance. Nurses rushed toward her the second she stepped out, their expressions shifting instantly from routine calm to urgent worry. 7 months pregnant, possible early labor, blood pressure unstable, someone shouted. Lily reached out blindly, whispering, "Jason, please." But the only hands there to catch her belonged to strangers in hospital scrubs. And miles away, Jason kissed Chelsea in an elevator, unaware that the moment he chose pleasure over responsibility would become the dividing line between his past and the devastating consequences to come. And in one blinding instant, Lily realized she was truly terrifyingly on her own. The world inside the hospital room felt strangely hollow, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Machines hummed softly, monitors blinked, and the scent of antiseptic hung in the air like an unwelcome reminder that nothing about tonight was normal. Lily lay on the narrow bed, her hospital gown clinging to her damp skin, her hair matted against her forehead. Every breath felt like a battle, shallow, shaky, threaded with fear she could no longer hide. A nurse gently squeezed her hand. "We're doing everything we can, sweetheart. Just breathe for me, okay?" But breathing felt impossible. Every inhale carried the crushing weight of not knowing, of being utterly, devastatingly alone. Her contractions intensified, spreading through her body like waves of fire. She cried out, her voice breaking, tears mixing with sweat. She reached for her phone again, though she already knew the truth. Jason wasn't coming. She dialed anyway. 1 ring, 2, straight to voicemail. She tried again, her fingers trembling so hard she nearly dropped the phone. "Please, Jason," she whispered into the receiver, her voice raw. "I'm scared. Please come." She waited. Silence answered. The nurse took the phone from her gently. "Sweetheart, let's focus on you and the baby right now." Lily nodded, but the pain wasn't just physical anymore. It clawed at her chest, burrowed into her ribs, hollowing her from the inside out. Her heart felt like it was cracking open in slow motion. Another contraction hit, violent and unforgiving. Lily screamed, gripping the bed rails until her knuckles turned white. Doctors rushed in, voices sharp and controlled. Blood pressure's dropping. She's dilating faster than expected. Fetal heart rate unstable. Lily heard everything and nothing at the same time. The words blurred together, but their urgency was unmistakable. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. A doctor leaned over her. "Lily, listen to me. Your baby is in distress. We need to deliver now." Her breath hitched as terror surged through her. "No, he's too early. He's not ready. We'll take care of him," the doctor promised. "But we need you to push." Lily sobbed as another contraction ripped through her. Her body felt like it was tearing apart, her mind fracturing under the pain and the fear and the crushing realization that the man she loved had abandoned her in the darkest moment of her life. She pushed. She screamed. She begged for it to stop, and through it all, she kept whispering Jason's name, as if saying it enough times might make him appear, might turn back time, might save their child. He never came. Minutes felt like hours. The room spun, her vision darkened at the edges. Nurses barked orders over the noise of machines that beeped with increasing urgency. And then, a tiny, fragile cry broke through the chaos. Lily gasped, tears spilling freely as they lifted the baby away. "Let me see him," she pleaded, reaching weakly. "You will," a nurse promised, "as soon as we stabilize him." Stabilize. The words stabbed her straight through the heart. She lay there shaking, staring at the ceiling tiles that blurred into a mosaic of white and gray. She felt empty, weightless, disconnected from her own body. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, her thoughts scattered like broken glass. Her baby's cry faded down the hall. Her world faded with it. Minutes later, a young nurse returned, her expression too calm, too controlled. "He's fighting, but he's very small," she said softly. "We've placed him in the NICU. You can see him soon." Lily nodded numbly, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She could barely breathe. Her chest felt crushed, her spirit splintered. She had imagined labor countless times, Jason holding her hand, whispering reassurance, kissing her forehead. Instead, she had screamed into an empty room, her hand clutching cold metal instead of warm fingers. Her heart broke in all the places she didn't know existed. She curled onto her side and sobbed, the kind of sobs that came from the center of her soul, deep, ragged, and desperate. The kind of sobs that belonged only to women forced to be strong when they shouldn't have to be. The nurse dimmed the lights before stepping out, and for the first time in her life, Lily understood what true loneliness felt like. But she had no idea the worst moment was still waiting for her just down the hall. The hallway outside the NICU was cold, colder than any hospital corridor had the right to be. Lily sat slumped in a wheelchair, her hospital gown hanging loosely off one shoulder, her skin pale and translucent under the fluorescent lights. She felt emptied out, carved hollow. Her arms still tingled with the memory of the baby they hadn't let her hold for more than a moment. The world around her seemed distant, muffled, as if she were underwater. A nurse approached with gentle steps. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "your father is here." Lily blinked slowly, her thoughts sluggish. My dad? Yes, he just arrived. Before she could react, a pair of heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Rob Carter appeared at the far end, his work boots still covered in sawdust, his jacket thrown on hastily, his breathing uneven from running. His eyes locked onto Lily, his little girl, and whatever resolve he'd carried into this hospital shattered instantly. Lily, he breathed, dropping to his knees beside her. She collapsed into sobs, her forehead pressing against his shoulder. Dad. He didn't come. I called him, and he didn't answer. Rob's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ground together. His arms tightened around her. I'm here now. I'm right here. But then the nurse returned, and Rob knew something was wrong even before she opened her mouth. Her expression was too controlled, too professional, as though she practiced it in front of a mirror for moments exactly like this. I'm so sorry, the nurse began, but the baby's heart rate is dropping again. We're doing everything we can. Lily let out a sound that wasn't human, half gasp, half cry, half prayer. Rob stood abruptly. Take us to him. They guided Lily into the NICU, past rows of incubators glowing softly like fragile stars. When they reached the smallest one, the world seemed to stop. Her baby, lay impossibly tiny, his chest rising and falling in small, uneven movements. His skin was translucent, his body hooked to tubes and wires. Lily reached through the small opening in the incubator. Her fingertip brushed against his. Hi, sweetheart, she whispered through a trembling smile. Mommy's here. Mommy's right here. Rob watched, his heart breaking in places he never knew existed. It happened quickly. Too quickly. The machines beeped faster, then slower. Then one long, unbroken sound filled the room. Time of death 3:32 a.m., a doctor announced quietly. Lily screamed. Not a loud scream, something far worse. A soft, breathless plea that cut through every soul in the room. Rob caught her before she fell. Minutes, or maybe hours later, a doctor approached them with a clipboard in hand and sorrow in his eyes. Mr. Carter, Miss Miller, I'm truly sorry for your loss. Lily pressed her face into her father's chest, her sobs shaking both of them. Then the doctor cleared his throat. We reviewed the security footage, the 911 logs, and the timestamp from the Uber driver. If she had been brought in even 30 minutes earlier, the chances of survival would have increased by over 70%. Rob stiffened. Slowly, carefully, he lifted Lily's head. What did you just say? The doctor hesitated. The delay. It was significant. She arrived alone. Her blood pressure had already crashed. No, Lily whispered, horrified. No, don't say it. Rob looked at her, really looked at her, and in that moment something clicked. Something terrifying and undeniable. Her son didn't die because fate was cruel. He died because Jason never came. But the twist didn't end there. The nurse who had been helping Lily earlier approached them timidly. She looked nervous, almost guilty. Mr. Carter, there's something you need to know, she whispered. When we tried calling her emergency contact, the number went straight to voicemail. We checked his location data for the police report. Lily froze. Location data? The nurse nodded slowly. Yes, he was at the Ashton Hotel, checked in with another woman. The cameras confirmed it. Silence crashed down like a tidal wave. Rob's eyes darkened, his fists curling slowly at his sides. And then, the nurse added one final sentence, one that lit the fuse on everything that would follow. Sir, he declined our call twice. And with that, the truth wasn't just painful, it became the spark for a storm no one could stop. For 3 weeks after the funeral, Lily barely spoke. She moved through Rob's house like a shadow, drifting from room to room with no real direction, as if her body had forgotten how to belong anywhere. Rob kept the lights low, the house warm, the fridge stocked with things she used to love. She didn't touch any of it. Her grief was a quiet, devastating thing, like a storm that had sucked all the air out of her lungs but left her standing anyway. But on the 21st morning, something changed. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't sudden, it was a whisper of clarity, barely noticeable at first. She caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Pale skin, hollow eyes, hair tangled from sleepless nights. She looked like someone grief had defeated completely. And yet, she was still standing. She touched the mirror lightly, her fingertip brushing against the glass. I'm still here, she whispered. It sounded foreign coming from her own mouth. But the moment she said it, she felt something flicker, small, fragile, but alive. That flicker was enough. Later that afternoon, while Rob was out buying groceries, Lily walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and stepped under the warm water. She washed her hair twice, scrubbed every inch of her skin, and cried quietly as the water carried pieces of the past down the drain. When she stepped out, she wrapped herself in a soft towel and stared into the mirror again. She still looked broken, but not helpless. And that difference mattered. That evening, she opened her laptop for the first time in weeks. The screen lit her face, making her eyes look brighter than they felt. She typed "grief support groups near me" and found a meeting scheduled 2 days later. Without overthinking it, she signed up. Her finger hovered over the confirm button for a moment before she pressed it. It was the first choice she'd made for herself since losing the baby. The next day, she stood in the doorway of the guest room, her temporary bedroom, and noticed the little blue blanket folded on the dresser. Her chest tightened, but she didn't crumble. Instead, she picked up the blanket gently, held it to her face, then folded it back into the drawer. Not thrown away. Not hidden. Just placed somewhere safer. When she walked downstairs, Rob looked up from the kitchen table, surprise flickering across his face. Lily was dressed in jeans and a soft sweater instead of pajamas. Her hair was brushed. Her eyes were still tired, but clearer. "I'm going to a support group tomorrow," she said quietly. Rob set down his mug, relief washing over him like a tide. "I'll drive you." She shook her head. "I want to go alone." He nodded slowly. Pride and sadness warred in his expression, but he didn't argue. "Okay, Lily. Whatever you need." The support group met in a modest room with folding chairs arranged in a loose circle. People of all ages sat there, parents who had lost children, spouses who'd lost partners, individuals who carried grief like a second skin. When it was Lily's turn to speak, she hesitated. Her throat tightened. "My son." She paused, swallowing hard. "My son didn't make it. And her voice cracked. I wasn't alone, but I was alone." The room didn't judge her. No one rushed to fill the silence. And for the first time since that awful night, Lily felt the faint warmth of something she hadn't felt in weeks. Understanding. After the meeting, a man approached her gently. He was in his early 30s, with tired eyes but a soft, steady voice. "I'm Noah," he said. "I lost my wife last year. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm around." Lily didn't know what to say. She managed a small nod. She didn't feel attraction. Not yet. But she recognized gentleness, and after everything she'd survived, gentleness felt like the rarest gift in the world. That night, she opened the notebook beside her bed and wrote 3 words. "I choose life." Her hand trembled, but she underlined it twice. She didn't know it yet, but that small decision made in the quiet of her father's home was the spark of a transformation that would change everything. And soon, the world that had once broken her would learn she wasn't the same woman anymore. Rob had always believed revenge was a young man's game, messy, impulsive, fueled by emotion instead of strategy. But what he felt toward Jason wasn't youthful rage. It was something older, colder, forged in the kind of heartbreak only a parent could understand. He didn't want to hit Jason. Didn't want to shout at him. Didn't even want to watch him suffer physically. He wanted something far more precise. He wanted the world to know exactly what Jason had done. And he wanted Jason to live with that truth carved into him forever. The opportunity arrived sooner than either of them expected. 2 months after the funeral, Hawthorne and Lyle Jason's firm announced a mid-year performance gala at a midtown rooftop venue with glass walls and a sweeping view of the Manhattan skyline. It was an event where partners mingled, junior analysts begged for attention, and Jason, desperate to rebuild the version of himself that had begun to crack, planned to show up with Chelsea on his arm. A perfect night for him. A night built for vanity, for image, for pretending. Rob didn't tell Lily what he planned. She was healing, tender, still building herself back piece by piece. This wasn't her burden to carry. This was his. On the night of the gala, Jason strutted through the venue's glass entrance as though he owned it. His suit was freshly tailored, his hair styled immaculately, his smile manufactured for applause. Chelsea clung to his arm, wearing a tight dress that shimmered beneath the lights, already imagining the photographs that would circulate around the office by morning. Jason raised a champagne glass, already rehearsing the jokes he'd tell. Already imagining his colleagues praising him. already rewriting history in his own mind. He didn't know Rob had arrived 15 minutes earlier. He didn't know Rob had been invited. And he didn't know Rob had brought evidence. When the room reached its peak, music pulsing, waiters weaving through suits and cocktail dresses, conversations buzzing, Rob stepped forward onto the small stage at the front. He didn't need a microphone. His presence alone was enough to quiet a room like a sudden shift in the wind. Heads turned. Whispers spread. Jason froze. "Rob?" he muttered, face draining of color. Rob lifted a small envelope, not thick this time, but unmistakably significant. "Good evening," he began, voice steady. "I was told this company celebrates integrity, accountability, and leadership, so I thought this was the right place to share something about one of your own." Jason pushed through the crowd. "Rob, what the hell are you doing?" "Stay where you are," Rob said, not even looking at him. "You've run from enough." The room went silent. Rob opened the envelope and placed photos on the projector table. He didn't need to explain technology, did the rest. The screen behind him blazed to life with timestamps. Lily's calls to Jason. 47 consecutive missed attempts. Hospital admission time. NICU emergency log. And finally, security footage of Jason entering the Ashton Hotel with Chelsea Hast 4. At the exact hour, Lily collapsed alone. Gasps erupted. Some people covered their mouths, others stared at Jason as if seeing him for the first time. Rob spoke softly, but every word sliced through the room. "My grandson died because this man, your colleague, chose a hotel room over his wife, over his child, over the family he promised to protect." Chelsea stumbled backward, her face flushing hot, eyes wide as if she'd just realized she'd been sleeping beside a ticking bomb. Jason stammered, This is taken out of Rob." "Stop." But Rob wasn't finished. He pulled out a second document, one signed by Jason earlier that week during a mediated session he'd thought would remain private. It was a confession, an admission that he ignored Lily's calls, a statement acknowledging his responsibility in the baby's death. Jason lunged for it, but 2 security guards intercepted him. Rob handed the confession to the firm's senior partner, an older man with an expression carved from stone. "I believe your company has a policy about moral conduct," Rob said simply. The partner nodded, once cold, decisive. Jason's career detonated in that single moment. Whispers turned into judgment. Judgment turned into disgust. Disgust turned into isolation. Chelsea slipped away from him like smoke. His colleagues averted their eyes. His boss looked as if he might have Jason escorted out immediately. Jason stood in the center of the room, exposed, stripped, undone. And Rob looked him straight in the eye. "You don't get to hide," he said. "Not from what you did. Not anymore." He walked off the stage without another word. And as Jason's world collapsed behind him, Rob didn't feel triumph, only the fierce, steady justice of a father who refused to let his daughter's pain be buried in silence. The morning after the gala felt strangely quiet, as if Manhattan itself was pausing to breathe. Lily woke slowly, sunlight warming the blanket draped over her legs. She blinked, adjusting to the brightness, and realized she had fallen asleep on the couch in Rob's living room. Her father sat nearby, boots off, coffee mug in hand, eyes fixed on her with a softness she hadn't seen since she was a child. "You sleep okay, kiddo?" Rob asked. She nodded, rubbing her eyes. "Yeah, I think I actually did." For the first time in months, her voice didn't tremble. Rob took a long breath, as though weighing the right moment to tell her something. "There's something you should know," he said. "Last night, I went to Jason's company gala." Lily's heart stuttered. "You did what?" "I didn't hurt him," Rob said quickly, didn't raise a hand, didn't need to. He took another sip of coffee. "But I made sure the truth didn't stay buried." She stared at him, searching his face. "Dad, what did you do?" "I showed them everything," Rob replied. "The hospital logs, the footage, the confession he signed. The man walked into that party like a king and walked out like he didn't belong anywhere." Lily's breath caught not out of fear, but out of something else. Relief. Justice. A release she didn't know she had been waiting for. "Why didn't you tell me you were going?" she whispered. "Because this wasn't your fight," he said. "You've carried enough. This part was on me." Her throat tightened as she reached for his hand. "Thank you," she said simply. He squeezed her fingers. "You're my kid. There's nothing I wouldn't do." Later that afternoon, Lily went for a walk along the river. She wore jeans, a soft sweater, and a light scarf that fluttered with the wind. The water shimmered in the sunlight, ripples catching the glow like tiny stars scattered across the surface. She breathed in the cool air and realized something important. The world no longer felt heavy. Broken, maybe, but no longer crushing her. She found a bench overlooking Manhattan's skyline and sat down. Couples passed by, children ran along the pavement, people walked dogs or sipped coffee. Life kept moving, with or without permission. Lily felt the familiar ache in her chest, the deep wound of losing her child, but the ache didn't drown her. It simply lived inside her, softer now, like a reminder of love rather than loss. Her phone buzzed. A message from Noah. "Hope you're okay today. Let me know if you want company. I'm around." She smiled, small, shy, but real. Healing didn't have to be loud. Sometimes it was a single message from someone who understood what broken felt like. She typed back, "A walk sounds good." Minutes later, Noah joined her, hands in pockets, a gentle smile on his face. He didn't try to fill the silence. He didn't say empty things like "you're strong" or "time heals everything." He simply sat beside her, the warmth of his presence grounding her. "Rough night?" he asked softly. "Something like that," she said. He nodded, understanding more than her words revealed. After a moment, he added, "You know, surviving something like this doesn't make you weak. It makes you extraordinary." She swallowed hard. "I don't feel extraordinary." "You don't have to," he replied. "Extraordinary people rarely do." They sat in silence, letting the wind carry away everything they didn't say. Lily felt the weight of grief settle into a place that didn't suffocate her anymore. A place that could live alongside hope. Then Noah looked at her, gentle but earnest. "You deserve a life that doesn't hurt," he murmured. "Whatever comes next, you deserve it." For the first time, Lily believed it. As they stood to leave, she looked one last time at the skyline, the same skyline Jason had worshipped, the same one that had taken him from her. But now, instead of seeing loss, she saw possibility. She saw healing. She saw strength. She saw a future that belonged to her, no longer tied to the man who broke her. And somewhere across the city, Jason faced the consequences alone. Fired, abandoned, stripped of every illusion he'd once clung to. No applause, no admiration. Only the truth, echoing around him like a verdict he could never escape. Justice had found him. Lily didn't need revenge. She didn't need anger. All she needed was this moment, the moment she finally stepped out of the shadow of her grief and into the quiet, steady light of her own life. Because in the end, she learned a truth every woman deserves to hear. You don't get stronger by surviving someone else's cruelty. You get stronger by choosing yourself afterward. Jason woke to the sound of pounding loud, insistent, rattling the thin walls of his rundown studio apartment. For a moment, he didn't recognize where he was. Gone were the floor-to-ceiling windows, the polished office floors, the luxury hotel suites. Instead, he lay on a lumpy mattress thrown directly onto the floor, surrounded by piles of old clothes, half-empty takeout boxes, and the stale smell of a life that had imploded overnight. The pounding came again. "Mr. Miller, open the door." "Management." Jason stumbled up, rubbing his face. His head throbbed. He had barely slept since the gala. When he opened the door, the building manager, a tired man with a clipboard, handed him a notice. "Rent's overdue. 3 days or you're out." Jason stared blankly. I paid part of it." "Part doesn't keep the lights on," the manager said, shrugging. 3 days. The door shut, leaving Jason alone with the echo of consequences he had once believed he was too clever to face. He slumped against the wall, sliding to the floor. His phone buzzed beside him. For a split second, he hoped it was anyone from his old life, a colleague, a friend, Chelsea. But the screen told him the truth. 0 messages, 0 calls, 0 missed opportunities, just silence. Chelsea had blocked him. His firm had fired him. His professional license had been placed under review. And the confession he signed stupidly, arrogantly, thinking Rob would never use it, had been circulated among senior partners across Midtown. No one would hire him. Not even small firms. The city he once believed he could conquer no longer wanted him. He opened his email. Another blow. The finance board had scheduled a hearing regarding his ethical conduct, citing possible negligence contributing to loss of life. They weren't talking about criminal charges yet, but they didn't need to. One more inquiry and his entire career would be erased. Jason curled forward, pressing his fingers into his temples. "This can't be happening," he whispered. "It was just one mistake." One. But he knew that wasn't true. It wasn't one mistake. It was 1,000 little choices, each one selfish, each one cruel, each one chipping away at the man he pretended to be until nothing remained. His phone buzzed again. He grabbed it, hoping for salvation. But it was a message from his mother. Only one sentence. "What have you done?" No comfort, no support, no offer to help, just condemnation. Jason tossed the phone aside. It hit the wall and fell to the floor, screen cracking a perfect metaphor for everything he had become. Hours passed. He didn't move. When hunger finally drove him out, he walked through the cold evening streets, passing places he used to visit without thinking, coffee shops where he'd flirted with Chelsea, bars where he'd bragged about promotions he hadn't earned, the glowing tower where he once worked. Now he couldn't even look up at it without feeling sick. He reached the riverfront, where city lights reflected on the dark water. His breath puffed out in uneven clouds. He leaned on the railing, staring down, his mind racing. For the first time, he felt the weight of the baby he never held. The baby whose life had flickered out while he lay in a hotel bed pretending to be someone important. He remembered the hospital's security footage. Rob's voice shaking the room. The gasps. The disgust. The truth. His truth. A wind blew hard, slapping his face. He gripped the railing, knuckles white. Part of him wanted to disappear, slip beneath the water where no one would judge him, no one would whisper his name with contempt. But another part, small, weak, but real, held on. He thought of Lily, her softness, her kindness, her love he hadn't deserved. He thought of Rob's eyes at the gala, not triumphant, not cruel, just honest. A father's rage, refusing to stay silent. Jason sank to his knees. For the first time in his life, he cried not the self-pitying tears of a man who'd been caught, but the raw, shaking sobs of someone finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd destroyed. He cried for the child he abandoned, for the woman he betrayed, for the version of himself he murdered long before anyone else did. When he finally stood, he knew something. His punishment wasn't the firing, the humiliation, the eviction notices. His punishment was waking up every day and remembering. And the world around him, indifferent, unstoppable, kept moving forward, while Jason remained trapped in the ruins he built with his own hands. The first warm day of spring arrived quietly, carrying a softness Lily hadn't felt in what seemed like a lifetime. She stood on the porch of Rob's house, arms wrapped around herself as a gentle breeze brushed past her cheeks. For months, she'd carried winter inside her, its silence, its heaviness, its unrelenting cold. But today felt different. Lighter. Like the universe had finally loosened its grip on her heart. Rob stepped onto the porch with 2 mugs of tea. "You thinking of heading out?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm going to the garden center." She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I want to plant something." Rob's eyes softened. "Something for the baby?" She didn't have to speak, he already knew. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I think that's a beautiful idea." The garden center was quiet, filled with rows of flowers, soil, and small trees waiting to be chosen. Lily wandered slowly, fingertips brushing against soft petals, inhaling scents that awakened pieces of her she thought were gone. For the first time, she wasn't searching for answers. She was searching for beginnings. Near the back, she found a small magnolia sapling, the kind that bloomed large, elegant flowers every spring. Something about it pulled at her heart. Strong, yet delicate, soft, yet resilient. Just like the child she'd loved, just like the woman she was trying to become. She was staring at the sapling when a familiar voice approached. "Magnolias are stubborn," Noah said gently, "but they're worth it." She turned, surprised to see him. He wore a navy sweater and held a small tray of herbs. His smile was warm, patient. "You're here early," she said. "I volunteer at the clinic on Saturdays. I stop by here before my shift." He glanced at the sapling. "That one, it's a good choice." Lily nodded, tracing its tender leaves. "I want to plant it for my son." Noah's face softened. "Then it's perfect." They walked through the aisles together, not touching, not flirting, just existing beside each other in a quiet, comforting way. When Lily found a small packet of wildflower seeds and read the words, "For New Beginnings," stamped on the front, her breath hitched. She placed them in her basket. Noah noticed. "Healing isn't about forgetting," he said softly. "It's about giving yourself permission to keep living." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "I'm trying." "I know," he said, "and you're doing better than you think." They checked out at the counter, and Noah helped her load the sapling into Rob's pickup truck. Before she left, he handed her his number, written neatly on a small slip of paper. "Only if you want to talk," he said. "No pressure." She looked at the note, then at him, and something warm settled inside her. Not love. Not yet. Something simpler. Hope. When she returned home, Rob helped her dig a small patch of earth in the backyard. She kneeled beside the sapling, pressing her hands into the soil. It was cool and damp, grounding her. "This is for you," she whispered, placing the roots gently into the hole. "For the life you gave me, for the strength you left behind." Rob knelt beside her, resting a hand on her back. The moment was quiet, sacred. As they covered the roots, a small breeze swept through the yard, rustling the young leaves of the magnolia. Lily lifted her face toward the sky, and for the first time since the tragedy, the sunlight didn't sting. That evening, she sat by the window, watching the tree sway in the fading light. Her heart no longer felt like a shattered thing. It still ached, yes, but the ache didn't define her anymore. Her phone buzzed. A message from Noah. "If you ever want company on your next visit to the garden center, I'd be honored to join you." She typed slowly, thoughtfully. "I'd like that." And as she hit send, something inside her shifted, subtle but profound. Not the dramatic rebirth people pictured, not a sudden burst of strength, just a quiet choosing. A choosing to stay, to heal, to love again someday. And without realizing it, Lily had taken her first true step into a future that was finally hers. Spring deepened, and with it came slow, gentle shifts in Lily's world, shifts so subtle that she didn't notice them at first. She attended her support group each week, spent afternoons tending the magnolia sapling, and sometimes met Noah for coffee at a small, quiet cafe overlooking the river. Her grief hadn't vanished, but it had softened enough for warmth to seep through the cracks. But life had a way of offering help from unexpected places. One rainy afternoon, Lily walked into the cafe and found a woman sitting alone at a corner table, shoulders slumped, fingers trembling around a cup of untouched tea. She looked up as Lily passed, and Lily froze. It was the young nurse from the hospital, the one who had held her hand, the one who had spoken the truth about Jason's location. Their eyes met. The nurse stood quickly, her expression nervous. "Lily, I didn't expect to see you." Lily offered a soft nod. "Hi, Emma." Emma looked relieved. She remembered her name. "Do you have a minute?" she asked quietly. There's something I think you should know." Lily hesitated, but then she pulled out a chair. "Sit." Emma sat, wringing her hands together. "I've been wanting to reach out for weeks, but I wasn't sure if it was my place." She breathed out shakily. "What happened that night? It hasn't left me. I keep thinking about your baby, about how alone you were. I remember every detail, and I can't let it go." Lily swallowed hard. "Neither can I." Emma nodded. "I know, and I'm not trying to bring you pain, but I came across something at the hospital, something I didn't know existed." Lily's heartbeat quickened. "What do you mean?" Emma lowered her voice. "There was an internal report filed the night you were admitted. Standard procedure when staff can't reach a patient's emergency contact. The report includes timestamps of every attempted call, the failed emergency alerts, and even the message the dispatcher sent to Jason's phone." Lily's breath caught. "I never saw any report." "You weren't supposed to unless you asked," Emma said. "But I think you need to see it, not out of revenge, but because it's the truth. And truth matters." She slid a folded document across the table, a copy she had quietly made from the internal system. Lily stared at it, hands trembling. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Emma blinked back sudden tears. "Because I held your son's hand when he was slipping away, and I don't think any mother deserves to be left in the dark about what really happened." Lily's vision blurred. She inhaled slowly, grounding herself. Then she opened the report. It was worse than she imagined. Jason had declined 3 emergency call attempts, not 2. 3. He'd blocked one number entirely. And worst of all, he had received a text from the hospital reading, "Patient is in distress. Please contact us immediately." The message was marked, "Read." Read. He saw it. He ignored it. Lily's stomach twisted. Emma leaned forward. "There's more. After you delivered, someone at the hospital tried contacting him again to sign consent forms. He declined those too." Lily closed her eyes, gripping the edge of the table. He let me go through everything alone." Emma nodded, tears spilling now. "He abandoned both of you. Completely." Lily pressed the heel of her hand against her mouth, fighting a sob. The cafe felt too small suddenly, the air too heavy. But Emma reached out and gently touched her arm. "I'm so sorry," Emma said softly, "but I needed you to know. And I wanted to tell you something else." Lily looked up, eyes red. "What?" "You weren't alone that night," Emma whispered. "You felt like you were, but you weren't. I stayed by your side for almost 2 hours after my shift ended. I held your hand, and when you screamed, I prayed for you. I prayed for that little boy. I wanted you both to make it." A tear slipped down Lily's cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't know." "I know," Emma gave her a shaky smile. "But you should know you mattered to someone in that room." Lily reached across the table and squeezed her hand. It was the first time she'd initiated touch with someone other than Rob or Noah since the tragedy. "Thank you," Lily repeated, voice steadier. "Really," Emma exhaled, relieved. "And if you ever need anything at all, you call me." As Emma left, Lily sat alone with the report in her hands, shaking, hurting, but also strangely lighter. The truth didn't break her. It freed her. And without realizing it, Lily had gained a new ally, one who had held her through her darkest hour and now stood ready to help her rise again. Rob had always been a man of action, steady, logical, and grounded. But after Emma handed Lily the internal hospital report, everything inside him shifted. It wasn't rage this time. It wasn't the blind fury of a father who wanted to break bones. It was something sharper, colder. A clarity that felt like steel being forged. For the first time, he had a detailed timeline proof that Jason hadn't just ignored Lily. He had actively refused responsibility in the moments that mattered most, and that changed the entire landscape. That night, Rob sat at the kitchen table long after Lily went to bed. Papers were spread out around him, the hospital report, the copies of Jason's confession, legal correspondence from earlier negotiations, and notes he had taken about Jason's firm. His reading glasses slid halfway down his nose as he leaned forward, highlighting timestamps and connecting dots like a man preparing for war. But this wasn't a war of fists. It was a war of truth. And Rob intended to win it. The next morning, he called their attorney, Michael Trent, a calm, sharp-minded man who had seen enough family tragedies to recognize when one needed justice rather than revenge. "Michael," Rob said as soon as the call connected, "I have new information, and we're reopening the case." Michael didn't need details yet. His tone became instantly focused. "Come in this afternoon. Bring everything." When Rob and Lily arrived at the law office, glass doors, dark wood furniture, shelves lined with legal journals, Michael greeted them with a seriousness that matched the moment. Lily sat down quietly, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee she barely touched. Rob placed the report on the table. "Read it." Michael adjusted his glasses and scanned each page, his expression hardened with every line. When he finished, he exhaled slowly. "This isn't just negligence," he said. "This borders on wrongful death." Lily's breath caught. "Does that mean he could be charged?" Michael nodded. "Potentially. Not guaranteed, but this report is powerful, and combined with the confession he signed, we have leverage most cases never get." Rob leaned back, arms crossed. "I don't care about prison, not anymore. What I want is accountability, real accountability, something that forces him to face what he did every single day." Michael tapped the table lightly. "We can draft a civil lawsuit, one that ensures he is legally bound to support your granddaughter's memorial foundation, and one that publicly acknowledges the truth." "Publicly?" Lily whispered. "Yes," Michael said. "This wouldn't stay hidden. He would have to sign his name under full admission of wrongdoing. And if he refuses, we take it to court. And once it's in court, it becomes part of public record." Lily's eyes widened. People would know what he did. "Everyone," Michael confirmed. Rob looked at Lily gently. This isn't about humiliation. It's about making sure he can never hurt you again, or anyone else. Lily nodded slowly. I want that, she said softly. Not revenge. Just the truth, out in the open. Michael drafted the document over the next week, shaping it carefully, precisely, ensuring every detail was supported by evidence. When Lily read it for the first time, her hands trembled, but not from fear. From relief, from strength. The lawsuit demanded a legally binding financial contribution to the Memorial Foundation, a written admission of negligence, a public apology statement, a restriction on any future attempt to contact Lily, permission for all evidence to become public record if he refused. It was fair, it was powerful, and it was bulletproof. The meeting with Jason was scheduled for Friday morning. When he arrived unkempt, broken, wearing a suit that didn't fit anymore, he looked like a ghost of the man he once tried so hard to become. His eyes flickered nervously when he saw Lily sitting across the conference table, calm and composed. You're here too? Jason stammered. Lily met his gaze without flinching. Yes. The attorney slid the lawsuit across the table. Jason read the first page. His hands began to shake. This will ruin me, he whispered. Rob leaned forward, eyes steady. No, Jason, you ruined yourself. This just makes sure you don't bury the truth with you. Jason looked at Lily, then really looked at her. For the first time, he saw the woman he had broken, and the woman she was becoming. Why are you doing this? He asked, voice cracking. Lily answered softly, but firmly. Because my son deserved better. And so did I. Jason broke down, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, like a man who finally understood there was no world left where he could hide. And when he finished, he picked up the pen. He signed. And for the first time since losing her baby, Lily felt something close to freedom whisper through her chest. The courthouse conference room emptied slowly, leaving only the three of them, Lily, Rob, and Michael, standing over the stack of freshly signed documents. The air felt different now, lighter, as if the walls themselves understood a weight had finally been lifted. The signatures on the pages were still wet, each letter written by a man who had finally run out of excuses. Outside, Jason sat on a bench in the hallway with his face buried in his hands. He didn't look up as Lily passed. He didn't speak. He didn't plead. He just sat there, a hollow man in a cheap suit, carrying the consequences he'd spent months pretending didn't belong to him. Lily didn't stop to watch him. She didn't need to. She no longer needed anything from him, not answers, not apologies, not closure. She had found her own. As she stepped into the sunlight outside the courthouse, a cool breeze brushed against her face. She inhaled deeply, letting the city noise wash over her, the car horns, the voices, the distant clatter of construction. For the first time in nearly a year, she felt connected to the world again. You okay? Rob asked, standing beside her. She nodded. Yeah, she said softly. I think I'm finally okay. They walked toward the parking lot, but before they reached the truck, Michael caught up to them. There's something else, he said, lowering his voice. Jason's financial situation isn't good. Agreeing to fund the Memorial Foundation means he'll have to restructure his entire life. He'll be working for years just to meet the minimum legal obligations. Rob shrugged. Good, that's called responsibility. But Michael shook his head. There's more. His employer filed an internal ethics complaint after the gala incident, and now that he signed this, well, his industry will blacklist him. Not officially, but he'll never work in finance again. Lily felt a strange ache in her chest, not pity, but the echo of what once was. She looked down at her hands. Thank you, Michael. For everything. He gave a warm, respectful nod. You deserve justice, Lily. And now you have it. That night, she returned home and sat by the magnolia sapling. The sky darkened into soft shades of blue and gray, and a few early stars peeked through the clouds. She ran her fingers along the tiny green leaves. Look how strong you're growing, she whispered. And I'm trying to grow too. Her phone buzzed. A message from Noah. How did today go? She considered her response carefully. Hard, but necessary. A few seconds passed. Do you want some company? I can bring dinner. Lily hesitated, not from uncertainty, but from something gentler. She looked at the sapling, then at the quiet yard, then back at her phone. Yes, she typed. I'd like that. Half an hour later, Noah's familiar car pulled up. He carried a paper bag filled with warm takeout and a small bouquet of wildflowers. Simple, delicate, beautifully imperfect. These felt like you, he said, handing them to her. She smiled, cradling the flowers against her chest. Thank you. They ate outside beneath the porch light, talking softly about nothing and everything. At one point, Noah looked at her, not pityingly, but with admiration. You're the strongest person I've ever met, he said. She shook her head. I don't feel strong. That's how strength works, he replied gently. It shows up even when you don't recognize it. After dinner, he helped her carry the plates inside. Before he left, he paused at the doorway. Lily, I know you're still healing, and I'm not asking for anything. Just know, I'm here. In whatever way you need. Her breath caught not from fear this time, but from warmth. I'm glad you're here, she said softly, and she meant it. When the door closed behind him, Lily leaned her forehead against the wood, eyes closed. The heaviness she once carried had transformed into something gentler, an ache that no longer consumed her. Across town, Jason sat alone in his apartment, staring at the legal documents he was now bound to follow. For the rest of his life, every check he wrote to the Memorial Foundation would remind him of the night he abandoned his own child. Every job he applied for would force him to confront who he had become. It wasn't prison. It was something deeper. A sentence written into his everyday existence. Lily, meanwhile, stepped out onto the porch again and looked at her magnolia tree, standing small but determined in the moonlit yard. For the first time, she felt the future calling her, and she knew she was finally ready to answer. The weeks that followed felt like the slow blossoming of a life Lily once believed she had lost forever. Healing didn't come in big, dramatic waves. It came in small, surprising moments. A morning when she woke up and the air didn't feel heavy. An afternoon when she found herself humming without realizing it. A night when she slept through without waking in tears. Even her magnolia sapling began to show tiny buds, pale green, delicate but undeniably alive. Every time Lily looked at it, she felt something inside her mirror, that growth. One Saturday, she decided to return to work part-time at the elementary school. Not full-time yet. Just a few hours a week to ease back in. She stood in front of her closet that morning, choosing a simple white blouse and soft gray slacks. When she caught her reflection, she saw the faintest trace of the woman she used to be. But more importantly, she saw someone new, someone stronger. As she walked into the school building, the smell of crayons, old books, and floor wax wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. Teachers hugged her gently, students waved, and one little girl ran full speed into her legs. Miss Carter, you're back. Lily knelt and hugged her tightly. I missed you too, sweetie. Being back didn't erase her pain, but it gave her purpose again. A place to pour love without fear of losing it. After her shift ended, she checked her phone and found a message from Noah. Want to join me for a walk after I'm done at the clinic? She stared at the screen for a moment before replying. Yes, I'd love to. That evening, they met at the riverfront. The sun had dipped low, casting warm streaks of orange and gold across the water. Noah walked beside her with an easy calm, his hands tucked in his jacket pockets. How was your first day back? He asked. Emotional, she admitted, but good, better than I expected. He nodded. The first step always feels the heaviest. They walked in comfortable silence, listening to the soft lapping of the river. Finally, Lily asked, Why do you volunteer at the clinic every week? Noah smiled faintly. Because after I lost my wife, I didn't know what to do with the grief. I felt like if I didn't give it a place to go, it would swallow me. Helping other people, it kept me afloat. Lily looked at him, recognizing her own pain in his eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. It's okay, he said softly. Grief doesn't mean the love ends, it just changes shape. As the sky darkened, Noah gently brushed his shoulder against hers. Not flirtatious, not assuming, just a quiet gesture of companionship. I'm glad you're here, he said. Lily's heart warmed not in a sweeping fairy tale way, but in a steady, safe way that felt new and honest. I'm glad you're here too. They sat on a bench overlooking the city lights. For the first time in a long while, Lily didn't feel overwhelmed by the skyline. She didn't see the place where Jason's betrayal lived. She saw beauty again, genuine and untainted. Noah pulled something from his pocket. I got you something, he said, almost embarrassed. You didn't have to. I know, but I wanted to. He handed her a small, smooth stone engraved with the words, "One day at a time." Lily traced the letters with her thumb, her pulse softening. It's perfect. I thought it might help on days that feel heavier, he said. I have one too. He showed her his same size, same message. She laughed quietly. A matching set, huh? Guess so, he chuckled. A breeze swept through, carrying the scent of the river and early spring blossoms. Lily closed her eyes, letting the moment sink into her bones. She wasn't in love, not yet, but she wasn't afraid of the possibility anymore. When Noah walked her to her car, he paused before she got in. I know you've been through things no one should ever face, he said gently. But Lily, there's so much life still waiting for you, and you don't have to walk into it alone. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man who understood heartbreak, who didn't rush her healing, who didn't demand parts of her she wasn't ready to give. Thank you, she whispered, for being patient with me. I'm not going anywhere, he replied. And when she drove home, the city lights shimmering in her rearview mirror, Lily realized something extraordinary. Hope hadn't returned suddenly. It had been walking beside her for weeks. She just finally noticed it. And now, with every step forward, she felt her life opening again softly, steadily, beautifully. Jason never realized how loud loneliness could be until it became the only sound in his life. His cheap apartment, what he bitterly called the shoebox, echoed with the hum of a refrigerator that barely worked and the distant noise of traffic leaking through thin walls. Nights lasted too long. Days blended together, and with every passing hour, he felt more like a ghost haunting his own existence. He tried finding work. God, he tried. He shaved, ironed his shirt, practiced his interview lines, but the moment he walked into any financial office and they typed his name into their system, everything fell apart. Faces tightened, conversations shifted. Interviews abruptly ended with polite lies like, "We'll be in touch," but they never were. His professional blacklist was complete. One afternoon, desperate and exhausted, Jason walked into a lower-tier financial consulting firm, nothing like the gleaming towers he used to imagine himself ruling. This place had flickering lights, water stains on the ceiling, and chairs that wobbled. But he didn't care. He needed a job. Any job. The hiring manager, a middle-aged man with a coffee-stained tie, narrowed his eyes as he flipped through Jason's resume. "You worked at Hawthorne and Lyle? Impressive," he said. Jason forced a small smile. "Yeah, I took time off for personal reasons." "Personal reasons, huh?" The manager typed on his keyboard. His expression changed suddenly. "Oh." Jason's stomach dropped. "What? You're that Jason Miller?" Jason's throat tightened. I don't know what you mean." But the manager turned the screen around. An article. One Jason had hoped would disappear. Finance executive ignored 47 calls, while wife gave birth alone. New lawsuit reveals negligence. There it was. His name, his shame, his downfall. Jason shoved the screen away. "That's taken out of context." The manager stood. "We're done here." "Please," Jason whispered. "I just need a chance." "No," the manager said sharply. "You need accountability. And from the looks of it, you finally got some." He walked out without another word. Jason stood in the middle of the office, humiliated. Again? By the time he stepped outside, rain had begun to fall thin at first, then heavier, soaking his cheap jacket. He didn't run. He didn't bother covering his head. He just walked, letting the cold sting his skin like punishment he knew he deserved. Then came the unexpected blow. As he passed a cafe, he saw Chelsea sitting inside, laughing with someone. A man in a crisp suit. Their hands brushed on the table. Chelsea looked happy, beautiful even. Jason hesitated at the window, then stepped inside. She saw him immediately. Her smile vanished. "Jason, you can't be here," she said, standing abruptly. "I need to talk," he said. "Please." The man beside her frowned. "Everything okay?" Chelsea didn't take her eyes off Jason. "Yeah, he's just someone I used to work with." "Used to?" Jason repeated, voice cracking. "Chelsea, after everything, you won't even talk to me?" Her expression hardened. "Jason, what we had wasn't love. It was adrenaline, ego, convenience, and I'm not going down with you." He swallowed, shaking. You told me I deserved more. I was wrong, she snapped. You weren't a rising star, you were a loaded grenade. I just didn't know it then. The man stood. I think you should leave. Jason backed away, his heart twisting painfully. Chelsea, please, I don't have anyone. She grabbed her coat. You had someone, and you threw her away. Those words hit him harder than any punch. He stumbled back into the rain, chest tight, breath uneven. He wanted to scream, to break something, to run until he collapsed. But he didn't. He simply dropped to the sidewalk, knees hitting the wet concrete. For the first time, he understood something he had refused to accept. He didn't lose his life by accident. He destroyed it piece by piece until there was nothing left. No job, no future, no love, no son, no wife, no dignity. Just the truth. And that truth was a cage he couldn't escape. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by distant thunder. Rain soaked him completely, shirt clinging to his skin, hair dripping down his forehead, breath coming in shaky gasps. He whispered into the storm, voice trembling. What have I done? But the storm didn't answer. And Jason finally realized he wasn't being punished by others. He was being swallowed by the man he chose to become. Summer settled gently over New Jersey, warming the sidewalks, softening the breeze, and filling the air with the scent of blooming flowers. Lily found herself smiling more these days, not the forced, polite smiles she'd worn like armor for months, but genuine ones that reached her eyes. She was learning to live again, discovering pieces of joy she once believed she'd never feel. One bright Saturday morning, she received a text from Noah. There's a street fair downtown today. Thought you might like it? No pressure. She stared at the message for a moment, her heart fluttering not with fear, but curiosity. A few months ago, she wouldn't have considered going. But today, she found herself typing back. I'd love to. She chose a simple summer dress, soft blue with tiny white flowers, nothing fancy, but enough to make her feel like herself again. When she stepped outside, the magnolia tree rustled gently, as if sending her off with its quiet blessing. Downtown buzzed with music, laughter, and the smell of roasted nuts and kettle corn. Children darted between booths, couples strolled hand in hand, and local artists displayed paintings that vibrated with color. Lily took it all in, with a sense of wonder she hadn't felt since before her world fell apart. Noah spotted her before she saw him. He walked toward her with a warm, steady smile, the kind that made her heartbeat slow instead of race. You made it, he said softly. I did. They wandered through the fair together. Noah bought her lemonade from a stand run by two teenagers who spilled half the cup but smiled proudly. Lily tasted it and laughed. It was far too sweet and somehow perfect. They paused at a booth selling hand-carved wooden ornaments. One piece, a small angel cradling a tiny star, caught Lily's eye. Her breath hitched. You can get it, Noah said gently, sensing the shift. It reminds me of him, she whispered. Then it belongs with you. She bought it, holding it carefully as they continued walking. Later, they stopped at a quiet corner of the fair, where a local band played soft acoustic music. People swayed gently to the rhythm. Children danced with sticky hands and uncontained joy. Noah glanced at her. You know, you're glowing today. She laughed lightly. That's the lemonade talking. No, he said, his voice steady. It's you. You're coming back to life. Something warm unfurled in her chest. I'm trying. You're doing more than trying, he replied. You're choosing to live again. That's rare. That's brave. A soft breeze drifted between them, carrying the smell of fresh popcorn and summer air. Lily looked up at him, truly seeing him not as a crutch, not as a distraction, but as a man with wounds of his own, who had learned to hold compassion like a candle in a storm. Noah, she said quietly, I wasn't sure I'd ever feel anything again. He waited. But with you, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, I feel safe, and that feels like something. Noah exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath for weeks. You don't have to rush anything. I'm here to walk beside you, not ahead of you. Lily nodded. Gratitude filled her eyes, not heavy, but soft and shimmering. They walked until the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. When they reached her car, Noah paused. Before you go, I want to show you something, he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, not jewelry, not something heavy with expectation, but a simple velvet pouch. He handed it to her. She opened it. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm. A tiny magnolia flower. Her breath trembled. "Noah, this is beautiful." "I had it made," he said. "Not as a promise, not as a question, just a reminder. That you're growing, that you survived." Tears pricked her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming realization that life still held beauty. That love, even fragile new love, could bloom from ashes. She slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. It fit perfectly, as though it had been waiting for her. "Thank you," she whispered. Noah smiled softly. "You deserve good things, Lily, always." As she drove home, summer air flowing through the open window, the charm tapped gently against her skin, a soft, rhythmic reminder that her life was no longer defined by loss. She passed the river, the park, the streets that once felt like reminders of grief. Tonight, they felt like pieces of a life being rebuilt slowly, beautifully. When she walked into the backyard, the magnolia tree swayed lightly, its leaves shimmering in the fading sunlight. She touched the new bracelet and smiled. Because love hadn't returned with thunder. It had returned quietly like a whisper of hope carried on a summer breeze. Jason woke to another morning of gray light filtering through the torn blinds of his apartment. The room smelled of stale air and regret, an odor that clung to him no matter how many times he opened the windows. He had barely slept. His mind replayed his failures on a loop, each memory sharper than the last. His phone buzzed. For a second, hope flickered. He snatched it from the nightstand, only to see another notification from the Memorial Foundation's automated system. "Payment due in 3 days. Late fees will apply." Jason let the phone slip from his hand. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. He was drowning, and no one was coming to pull him out. His savings were nearly gone. His unemployment benefits were dwindling. And the foundation payments, legally mandated, were slowly squeezing what remained of his finances. At first, he'd been angry, then resentful, then numb. Now, there was nothing left to feel. He dragged himself to the kitchenette and opened the refrigerator. An old container of noodles, a half-empty bottle of water, and nothing else. He closed it again, leaning his forehead against the door. "God, what happened to me?" he whispered. But he already knew. He had happened to himself. That afternoon, he forced himself to leave the apartment. He needed air, movement, something. He stuffed his cracked phone into his pocket and walked toward the subway station. The city bustled around him, people laughing, rushing to meetings, sipping iced coffees, their lives full, his empty. He boarded the train and found a corner seat. Across from him sat a young couple holding hands, soft smiles, intertwined fingers, eyes full of warmth. Jason looked away quickly, shame burning in his throat. He used to have that. He threw it away. At the next stop, he got off and wandered through the city until he reached the river, a place he used to enjoy back when Lily would pack sandwiches and they'd sit on a blanket, talking about the baby's name and imagining their future. He sat on a bench, staring at the water. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unwashed, and his spirit broken. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry." But the wind carried the words away. At that moment, a voice cut through the quiet. "Jason Miller?" He turned sharply. A woman in her late 30s stood a few feet away, professional, composed, holding a folder tucked under her arm. Her expression was neutral, but not unkind. I'm Jason," he said. "I'm Detective Laura Myers," she introduced herself. "I'd like to ask you a few questions. About your wife, about the night she delivered." Jason's stomach dropped. I already signed everything. I cooperated." "I know," she replied calmly. "This isn't about the civil case." His pulse quickened. "Then what is it?" "We've received a tip," she said. "New evidence. A report filed by a nurse. She claims you received a hospital emergency message that night and marked it as read." Jason's mouth went dry. It's a misunderstanding." The detective opened her folder. Inside were printed screenshots of the hospital's emergency messaging system, timestamps clearly visible. "You saw this message," she said, "and chose not to respond." His breath faltered. "I didn't know I wasn't thinking." "That's the problem," she said quietly. "A child's life was on the line, and you chose not to act." He trembled. Am I Am I going to be charged? We're assessing whether criminal negligence applies, she replied. No decisions yet. But I'll be honest, things don't look good for you. Jason's knees buckled, and he collapsed back onto the bench. I can't survive prison, he whispered. Detective Myers closed the folder gently. Maybe you should have thought about that before walking into a hotel instead of a hospital. Her words pierced him deeper than she intended. Because they were true. Every one of them. She gave him her card and left him sitting there, small, broken, and shaking. When she disappeared into the crowd, Jason buried his face in his hands and sobbed. Not the dramatic breakdown he had at the gala, not the empty self-pity of his earlier days. This was something different. A complete collapse. For the first time, he understood that the consequences weren't over. The world wasn't done with him. And there might still be a price he hadn't paid. As the sun set, streaking the river with gold and crimson, Jason whispered the truth he had run from for too long. I destroyed everything, and the city around him, alive, indifferent, merciless, kept moving forward, while Jason remained frozen in the wreckage of a life he burned with his own hands. Summer's warmth lingered well into September, painting the evenings in soft gold. For Lily, the world no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a doorway, one she was finally ready to walk through. The magnolia tree in the backyard had grown taller, its leaves deeper in color, its branches stretching toward the sky as if reaching for a future brighter than its roots ever knew. Lily often sat beneath it after work, breathing in the quiet peace of her life, the life she rebuilt, the life she fought for. Her grief was still there, but it no longer swallowed her. It lived inside her like a tender scar, a reminder of love once held. One Friday evening, as she watered the base of the magnolia, Rob stepped outside carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. He handed her one. You know, he said, settling beside her, I've been thinking. You've come a long way. She smiled softly. Some days it doesn't feel like it. That's the trick, Rob replied. You don't notice healing while it's happening. You only notice when one day you can breathe again. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. Thanks for not giving up on me. Rob pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Never crossed my mind. Before she could respond, the gate creaked open. Noah stepped in slowly, hands tucked into his pockets, wearing a slightly nervous smile. Hey, he said, I hope I'm not interrupting. Lily stood, wiping her hands on her jeans. Not at all. I'm glad you're here. Rob gave a knowing smirk and headed inside. I'll leave you too. Lily rolled her eyes but said nothing. Noah approached her, glancing at the tree. It's grown a lot. So have I, she said quietly. He nodded. Yeah, you have. There was a softness between them, familiar now, but deeper than before. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't forced. It had grown the way magnolias do, slowly, quietly, and beautifully. I wanted to talk to you, Noah said. About something important. Lily swallowed, bracing herself. Okay. You've been through a level of pain most people couldn't survive, he began. And I didn't want to push anything on you while you were healing. But I want you to know something. He took a step closer. I care about you, Lily, not because I pity you, not because you're broken, but because you're brave, kind, strong, and more resilient than anyone I've ever met. Her breath trembled not from fear, but from emotion she hadn't let herself feel fully until this moment. Noah. He held up a hand gently. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Lily looked away, blinking back tears, then looked back at him, really looked. She saw a man who didn't want to rescue her, who didn't want to replace her past, who only wanted to walk beside her wherever the future led. Noah, she said softly, I care about you too, more than I expected, more than I thought I could. He exhaled slowly, relief washing over his face. She stepped closer. But I need you to understand something, she continued. I'll always carry my son with me. That won't change. I know, he said softly. And I wouldn't want it to. Lily felt a tear slip down her cheek. Noah wiped it gently with his thumb. Then, without pressure, without urgency, he leaned in and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. Not her lips, not a claim, a promise. A promise that healing and love could exist side by side. A promise that life still had beauty to offer. A promise that she wasn't alone anymore. Lily closed her eyes, letting the moment settle deep in her chest. The first warmth of a new love, fragile, hopeful, and real, bloomed inside her. When she opened her eyes, Noah smiled. "I brought something," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a tiny velvet pouch. She laughed softly. "Another gift?" "Kind of." Inside was a small silver key. "What's this?" she asked. "My house key," he said gently. "Not because I expect anything, but because I want you to know my door is open, whenever you're ready." Lily's heart swelled not with anxiety, but with peace. She closed the pouch and held it to her chest. "I'll come when it feels right," she whispered. "I know," he said. They stood beneath the magnolia tree as the sun dipped beyond the horizon, painting the sky with gentle shades of pink and lavender. The evening felt warm, safe, full of possibility. Lily looked at Noah, then at the tree, then at the quiet yard that had witnessed every step of her healing. For the first time since losing her baby, she felt truly alive. And as a new chapter opened before her, Lily realized something she never expected. Her story didn't end in tragedy. It began in survival, and blossomed into love. And just like that, our story comes to a close. But you, yes, you, still sitting here with us until this very moment, there's a reason you stayed. Something in this journey touched your heart, stirred a memory, or whispered to a quiet place inside you. So now, let's breathe for a moment and look at what this story is really telling us. Life will break us. People will fail us. Love will wound us in ways we never imagined. But like the Stoics taught, especially Marcus Aurelius, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Lily's pain didn't end her story. It shaped her strength. It taught her that healing is not forgetting. Healing is choosing yourself again, day after day. It's choosing to grow, even in the dark. We're reminded that justice doesn't always roar. It sometimes arrives quietly, through truth, courage, and the refusal to stay silent. And most importantly, new love isn't a replacement. It's a reward for surviving what should have broken you. If this story moved you, inspired you, or stayed with you in any small way, please like this video, share it with someone who needs healing, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts just like yours.